$110 billion annually. That's what Apple extracts from its ecosystem through a pricing strategy deliberately designed to trap users, and the SEC filings prove it was intentional. In the next 8 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how this lock-in works, the specific dollar cost it extracts from tech professionals earning $100K to $200K annually, and the math that reveals whether switching away would actually save you money or cost you more than staying. But here's the hidden part. By minute 6, I'll show you the single decision buried in Apple's 10K that proves they engineered incompatibility specifically to force services revenue growth. If you own Apple stock or you're trapped in 5 devices, you need to see this before your next upgrade cycle. Let's start with the belief that's keeping you locked in. You probably think Apple's premium pricing reflects superior quality. The ecosystem integration is seamless. Your iPhone talks to your Mac, your iPad syncs with your watch, everything just works. And that convenience, that frictionless experience is worth the premium you pay, right? That's the belief, and it's not entirely wrong. Apple's integration is genuinely polished. But here's what the SEC filings reveal. The convenience you're paying for is increasingly a function of intentional incompatibility with everything else. Let's look at the numbers. Apple's 2023-2024 10K filing shows services revenue grew 16% year over year, reaching $2 billion in FY 2024. That's Apple's fastest growing segment. But here's the critical detail. Gross margins on services hit 72%, nearly double the gross margin on hardware, which sits around 45-46%. What does that margin gap mean? It means Apple makes far more profit per dollar of services revenue than it does per iPhone or Mac sold. So the business incentive shifted. Apple isn't primarily making money on the device anymore. It's making money on keeping you locked into services, iCloud Plus, AppleCare Plus, Apple Music, Apple TV Plus, for as long as possible. At prices that would never be sustainable if you could easily migrate your data to Android or Windows. The incompatibility is the lock. Consider the data migration problem. If you own an iPhone, iPad, Mac, Apple Watch, and AirPods, your photos, messages, health data, and app ecosystem are all encrypted and indexed within Apple's infrastructure. Apple doesn't prevent Android or Windows from accessing this data in theory, but in practice, the friction is immense. Moving your iCloud library to Google Photos requires manual export. Your Apple Watch doesn't sync with Android the same way. Your paid apps don't transfer, you'd repurchase them on a new platform. Research from Gartner and Forrester on vendor lock-in consistently pegs this kind of switching cost at $500 $2,000 per user for a complete migration. For a tech professional with 5-8 devices, the time cost alone, backing up, reinstalling, reconfiguring, relearning a different OS, can mean 20-40 hours of lost productivity, or $2,000 $4,000 in opportunity cost if you're billing hourly. But here's the trap. Apple knows this, and they price their services accordingly. AppleCare Plus is the clearest example. A baseline AppleCare Plus plan for an iPhone runs $99 per year, or $149 for 2 years. That covers accidental damage and hardware failures. But here's what Apple's own support documentation reveals. The out-of-pocket repair cost for screen damage without AppleCare Plus is $349 on a standard iPhone 15. For battery replacement, it's $89. For more severe damage, you're looking at $400 $600 for out-of-warranty repair or a complete device replacement. Now compare that to a third-party repair shop. iFixit, a major independent repair vendor, can replace an iPhone screen for $150 $200. A battery replacement costs $30 $50 in parts and labor. This is 40-60% cheaper than Apple's repair pricing. So why would you buy AppleCare Plus? Because if you're locked into the ecosystem, your photos are in iCloud, your apps are paid, your productivity workflow runs on Mac OS, the switching cost of moving to Android exceeds the savings from cheaper repairs. AppleCare Plus becomes a tax on ecosystem lock-in, not insurance. You're paying for the privilege of staying locked in. Let's calculate the annual cost for a mid-career professional. Let's say a software engineer earning $140,000 annually with 5 Apple devices: iPhone, iPad Pro, MacBook Air, Apple Watch, and AirPods Max. AppleCare Plus on the iPhone, $99/year. AppleCare Plus on the MacBook, $379/year, 2-year plan, amortized. AppleCare Plus on the iPad, $89/year. AppleCare Plus on the Watch, $79/year. AirPods Max warranty extension, roughly $30/year. That's $676 in AppleCare Plus annually. Then add mandatory services, iCloud Plus 200 GB, $3.99/month equals $48/year. Apple Music, $10, $99/month equals $132/year if not bundled in Apple One. Apple One Premium combines music, TV Plus, arcade, fitness, iCloud 2 TB, News Plus, $22. $95/month equals $275/year. Assuming the professional uses Apple One, $275 plus $300 for forced upgrades, moving from iPhone 13 to iPhone 15 every 3 years, roughly $100/year amortized upgrade premium. Total $676 AppleCare Plus $275 Apple One plus $300 upgrade premium equals $1,251 annually minimum. For a household with 2 tech professionals both locked in, double that, $2,502/year. Over 10 years, that's $12,510 in forced services and AppleCare Plus spending. Add the $1. $0.2 in incremental hardware costs from being unable to switch to cheaper Android or Windows alternatives. Because the data migration and relearning curve isn't worth the $200, $400/year hardware savings. And the 10-year cost of ecosystem lock-in reaches $14, $400, $18,000 for a single professional. Now here's the opportunity cost that compounds. If that $251 annually were diverted to a diversified index fund, S&P 500, average 7% annual return, instead of staying locked into Apple services, here's what happens. $251 times 10 years equals $12, 510 principal. Compounded at 7% annual growth equals $24. 857 after 10 years. The opportunity cost, the wealth you didn't accumulate, is roughly $12, 347. But here's the kicker. If you're in the $100K, $200K income bracket and you're contributing to a 401K or Roth IRA, that $251/year could be $251 plus the tax deduction, $300, $400 in federal and state tax savings if deducted or sheltered. Redirecting that money into tax-advantaged accounts could compound to $28, $32, over 10 years. The real opportunity cost of Apple lock-in for a mid-career professional isn't just $12, it's $20. $25, in foregone wealth accumulation. But Apple knows the one-time switching cost, $500, $2,000, looks bigger than the compounded opportunity cost most people can't see. That's the trap. Here's where the SEC filing I promised reveals the strategy. In Apple's 2024 10-K under the business section, page 812. Management explicitly states that services revenue is driving long-term profitability and that ecosystem integration is the primary driver of customer retention. But what they don't say, what's hidden in the margin analysis and the installed base lock-in metrics, is that this service's growth is entirely dependent on making it too expensive to leave. Apple's installed base sits at 2 billion active devices as of Q2 2024. That's nearly 30% of the global smartphone and personal computer market. On average, each user pays $50, $150 annually in services. For 2 billion users, even at a conservative $75 average, that's $165 billion in potential annual services revenue. Apple currently captures $85, $2 billion of that. The remaining $80 billion is the growth runway, and every point of incompatibility, every design choice that makes leaving the ecosystem harder, is engineered to capture more of that runway. The FTC recognized this in 2023-2024 antitrust complaints. The agency specifically cited Apple's App Store exclusivity and device incompatibility as anti-competitive practices designed to lock users into the ecosystem and prevent them from accessing cheaper alternatives. The complaint notes that Apple could interoperate with Android and Windows at a higher level, but chooses not to, not for technical reasons, but for business reasons. So here's the delta, the gap between what you believe and what's actually happening. You believe Apple's premium pricing reflects quality and convenience. The reality, Apple's premium pricing reflects engineered incompatibility with everything outside the ecosystem. You believe switching would cost $3,000, $5,000 in disruption and repurchase. The reality, switching would cost $500, $2,000 one time. That cost is recovered within 18 months by not paying inflated services and AppleCare Plus premiums. You believe staying locked in preserves your data and app investments. The reality, your data is already being held hostage by incompatibility. You're paying $250/year extra to avoid the pain of migration, not because migration isn't possible. The delta is $20, $25, in foregone wealth accumulation over 10 years. That's a 401k match you didn't receive. That's a Roth IRA contribution you didn't make. That's $25. That could have compounded at 7% to $55, by age 65. For a single tech professional, that's the cost of staying locked in. So what should you actually do with this information? First, audit your actual ecosystem. You really need AppleCare Plus on every device. Research suggests 60% of professionals buy it out of fear, not because they've calculated the actual replacement cost. If you use a phone case, screen protector, and don't expose devices to water, the odds of needing AppleCare Plus for screen damage are lower than Apple's pricing assumes. Second, calculate your actual switching cost, if you're considering Android. Windows or a hybrid setup, document the real costs. $500 for a one-time data migration service, $300 in repurchased apps, $200 in your time. If that total is under $2,000, your payback period is less than 18 months of freed up services spending. Third, pressure test your next device decision. Before you automatically upgrade to the next iPhone, ask, is the upgrade driven by genuine need? Or by incompatibility creep making your older device less functional? If it's the latter, the ecosystem lock is working exactly as designed. Finally, consider a diversified hardware strategy. A tech professional doesn't need 5 Apple devices. An iPhone plus MacBook might be optimal for ecosystem integration, while a budget Android device and a Windows laptop preserve choice and reduce lock-in costs. The numbers are clear. Apple's ecosystem isn't sticky because it's better. It's sticky because escape velocity